The Murkmire DLC is now available for PC and Mac, so I wanted to check out some of those class changes that have come about with this new patch. In this video, we'll be looking at the Sorcerer class changes specifically, and in the background as usual, I have one of my builds that I am playing. This is the Annihilator Magicka PvP build. I'll put a link for that in the description as well, so here we go. Okay, so starting with the Dark Magic skill line, we're going to take a look at some changes to Crystal Shards and Crystal Fragments here. The icon now changes when you have the proc available, so that's good. A little bit more information for players. I guess there was a bug that sort of froze you for a split second, so that's been fixed apparently. And this was interesting. They actually increased the damage of Crystal Frags back to 20%. Up from 10%. So this was the original damage of the ability, and then they nerfed it down, and now it's back up again. So, okay, interesting. So there's now a very brief minimum travel time. They commented something very similar to this on the Nightblade class changes, looking at the bow skill, the Grim Focus proc. So it doesn't really explain what the minimum travel time is, so that's going to be interesting to test. Is that like a half second, a quarter second? What is that exactly? They don't really explain. This is also a pretty big change where you can't get the Crystal Frag proc unless you're in combat actively. So that is interesting. It used to be where it would just proc off of any cast, didn't matter if you were in combat or not. So a lot of little tweaks here. I guess what's the most interesting is the increase of damage is it's gonna be back up to 20%. So that's pretty good as far as PvP Magsork is concerned. And they didn't explain why that was increased, but okay, we'll take it. So Dark Exchange got some updates as well, some reworking. So it's now going to restore less Magicka instantly, but it has a restore over 20 seconds, which is similar to things like Betty Netch and the Magblade restoration skill. I'm forgetting what that's called now. But basically the comment was they want you to be more thoughtful about it and sort of wait longer for the total resource return. So I get that, and it doesn't seem like a major change. You still get a good portion of it. The 3600 Magicka is restored instantly. So I guess maybe the thought is you won't be casting this multiple times. They didn't explain what happens. You know, what happens if you cast this twice? Do you get two Magicka over time buffs, or does it just overwrite the buff? And maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe it actually overwrites it so they're forcing you not to stack this as much. I don't know. So we'll just have to test this more to find out. Dark Deal also has a reduced cost bonus for the morph effect. Okay. Looking at Rune Prison next, this skill got a lot of changes. A lot of changes here. So the ability and the morph. Morphs now stun after 1.2 seconds. Is this also true for defensive rune? Because that's kind of useless for defensive rune. Okay. So a 1.2 second delay, which is a pretty large delay. That's big. That's a big nerf. So there's a new visual effect which will display on your target. So I kind of wonder what that's going to look like. Because one of the strengths of Rune Prison has always been it's hard to see. Doesn't have a very big visual effect, so I wonder if they made this more visible now, where you can clearly see like the stun is going to happen in the middle of, you know, combat where you have lots of other buffs and lots of other visual effects happening. Will you be able to see this well or not? So they say the initial application of the effect cannot be dodged, but if the target is dodging after the 1.2 seconds, they will avoid the stun. So basically throwing in some counterplay. You'll get the effect, and then you'll know in about 1 second the stun is going to happen. Time your roll dodge, and then you can avoid the stun. So it's an interesting idea as far as the counterplay. I kind of like it because this stun is super strong. But we'll just have to see. I mean, there's a lot happening here. They also decreased... Oh no, they increased the duration of the stun to 3 seconds. So they made the stun last longer, which they've been going back and forth on this stun duration for a long time. Wow. Okay, so they increased the duration of the stun again. And they also increased the damage done if the target doesn't break free. Let's read the comment. So they wanted to clearly telegraph when the stun was coming, since there's no projectile, which is true. And they want to give time to prepare. So, I mean, say what you will. People probably will be upset. It is a nerf. It's definitely a nerf. But on paper, at least, it kind of makes sense where there should be some more counters to this ability. The way it's been previously on live is there's absolutely no counter for Rune Cage. So I agree with this somewhat. But the fact that this affects defensive rune is ridiculous. Like, it's a defensive skill. You're being hit and you have to wait, you know, over a second for your target to actually be stunned. It's going to make that sort of useless. So I kind of agree with the change for Rune Cage, but for defensive rune, it should have just stayed the same. Okay, moving on. A lot going on here. Daedric Summoning, so a lot of changes here as well. Bound Armor got a buff, so that's more of a tanking skill for a Sorc tank. That's now buffed, good for you. Conjured Ward, this is probably the biggest change for Sorcerer in Murkmire. It's now limited to 50% of the caster's max health. Most of us knew that already. That's been tweaked for a while now on the PTS. And the comment here is they want players to make interesting choices. Let's see, it requires a balance now of offensive and defensive stats. Whereas a player used to be able to go just 100% pure max magicka offensive stats and also get the big damage shield at the same time. Now they're saying you need to balance your stats more. So, okay. I get it. Daedric Prey got a buff, so decrease the cost by 20%. And a lot of just cost decrease on pet skills, on both pet skills here. So they're trying to buff pets again to make them more useful, I guess. So that's good. I don't use pets a lot, especially in PvP. They seem a little bit useless, but this would be interesting because the buffs are pretty good in this case. So worth checking out if you run pet build. The comment was the abilities were too costly, so they just reduced the cost. Okay. Storm Calling. So we have another major expedition nerf. I don't know. This skill was not OP at all. It was nice having that little bit of major expedition. Now it's just 4 seconds. I don't think 4 seconds is enough to justify having major expedition on the skill at all, but okay, whatever. So Mage's Fury got some updates. It seems like there was a lot of bugs recently with Mage's Fury, so you could cast it on corpses. That's awesome. Sometimes it wouldn't trigger at all. Great. Yeah, so just a lot of fixes here on Mage's Fury. So hopefully all the bugs are gone with this skill. It is a really important skill for Mag Sorc. And then here's another big nerf that maybe people overlooked a little bit on PTS is now the third bar for Overload is gone. It's completely gone. And you just have to wonder about changes like this when this part of the skill has been in the game for 4 years. And they wait 4 years to get rid of the third bar. Which I guess I understand why, but why did they wait so long? I don't know. They've added some things to the Overload skill, which maybe will make up for the fact that you don't have a third bar anymore. I don't know. So you can now use your weapon abilities. Basically, you can light attack weave with Overload. So Overload into a Force Pulse or something like that. Okay, that's pretty cool. I want to try that out, definitely. But you can no longer generate any ultimate while in Overload. Bit of a nerf there. You can toggle it on when you just have 25 ultimate left, so basically one attack. Okay, that's fine. This is where they talk about the weaving of abilities, so this is cool. I do want to see how that works. It could be powerful. But they actually decrease the light attack damage by 50%, which is a lot. So, you know, even though you can light attack weave with something like Force Pulse, I don't know if it'll be worth it anymore, since this now is 50% less damage on a Overload light attack. What is really interesting, though, is 60% increase on heavy attacks. There could be some interesting builds that you could make with this, like a PvP Sorc tank heavy Overload attack build or something like that. That could be interesting. We'll see. And they just talked about having access to your full arsenal while in Overload mode. But again, kind of a mixed bag here because we're losing the third bar. We're losing a lot of damage from Overload light attacks. So I don't know. Overall, that's kind of a mixed bag, I think, for Sorcerers this patch. You obviously have the big nerf to shields and shield stacking in general. But then if you are a pet build, you have a lot of nice buffs to the pet playstyle. And for PvP Sorcs, you also have a nice buff to Crystal Frags. But you also have a nerf to Rune Prison. So this patch is going to be tough for Mag Sorc. You have kind of a little bit of buffs and a lot of nerfs overall. So that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Will you still be playing your Mag Sorc in Murkmire? Let us know what you think. And until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.